Hello, and welcome to the Sheri Kaye Hoff Show. This is Sheri here, and we focus on living joyfully in your life and business. I have a fantastic guest here with me today, and she's a friend first and a guest second, and I can't wait to have our conversation. But let me tell you about Alecia. Alecia Huck is the founder of Maverick and Company, a management consultant, sought-after speaker, and author. She specializes in helping leadership teams of fast-growing companies build the critical skills, tools, systems, and processes they need. She is known for working closely with leaders to customize solutions, protect existing culture, and fix what is broken without going corporate. Experienced in industries from construction to criminal justice, Alecia is proud to work with entrepreneurs so they can spend less time fighting fires and more time building what matters. Hi, Alecia. So fantastic to have you here. I can't wait to have our conversation.
Hi, Sheri. I love it. It's so interesting when you have friends that are up to such big things, right? You're like, oh, I guess I'll be on your podcast. That's pretty cool.
I know. It's so amazing. And before we jumped on here, we had a whole big talk about the new Top Gun Maverick and and that's kind of where you came up with your name, right? Maverick and Company.
I had the name Maverick a long time ago, partly because of the movie and partly because I'm just kind of ornery, right? And I have this, for me, it's two things, right? The original Samuel Maverick, where we get the name Maverick, was this cattle rancher in Texas. And he never branded his cattle. So when people would pay him with cattle, they'd go wander around and people would see them and think, oh, that must be a Maverick. So it kind of came to represent like this whole break the rules thing, which I really love. But I'm also, the other side of it is, he didn't brand his cattle. So it was really easy to steal his cattle. All you had to do was take him and throw your brand on. So I think sometimes the answers that you need are break all the rules, do everything crazy, right? But sometimes it's the other side of the fence. It's the boring, practical stuff like, hey, why don't you brand your cattle?
Yeah, it's kind of simple, right? So you talk about this idea of cloning yourself. What is that, and how can people do it?
Well, I think it's mostly about a state that you're in your business, right? Because we've all had those days where you're like, man, if I just had 10 of me, I could get all this stuff done and everything would be fine. So we all make that joke, right? Oh, if only I could clone myself, everything would be fine. But cloning yourself, one, not very financially responsible. There's too much involved there. And then two, it doesn't actually solve the things that are broken inside your business. So if you're a professional and you're trying to get better, right? Get better results, have what you want, maybe have more balance in your life, have more free time. You got to get good at the right things. You can't just write a big check to some sketchy biotech company.
Right. No kidding. So let's talk about this idea of the Superman rule. What's the Superman rule?
So if you're not going to clone yourself and you still do have to get everything done, right? Then the question becomes, well, what are you supposed to do? How do you actually get better results, even if you don't have an extra you? And the Superman rule is one that I talk about with a lot of people. So if you take Superman or Superwoman, of course, right? They can write more parking tickets faster than anybody else on the planet. But that's not a good use of a superhero. So the Superman rule is stop doing dumb stuff that anybody could do and focus and spend your time on the stuff that only you can do. And I'm guilty of this one too, right? There's all kinds of stuff that I think it's just quicker if I just knock it out myself, right? I'll just take 10 minutes. But the truth is there's the total mental weight of all the stuff that you're trying to manage. So for most of us, we need to get help sooner. But we also need to be more strategic about how we hire that help, right? Because you've hired people and you hire somebody and it turns into 10 times as much work as just doing it yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, the one thing about hiring people that I've learned is, when I work, I make mistakes. So when I hire someone, I have a high standard, but also people do make mistakes. And so I think a big learning thing. I mean, I would always be calm with the person who was making the mistake and explaining to it, but I would get so upset inside, like, hey, I'm paying money to have this done right. And why does this person make a mistake? Well, people make mistakes. I mean, I make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. Mm-hmm. So that was a big learning thing for me. But I love this idea of the Superman rule. So what about the messy desk exception?
Yeah. So a lot of us, we live in sort of a guru culture. I don't know if you've noticed, right? But there are 8 million people who are very excited for just $99.95 or whatever their amount is to tell you how you should be living your life. And the messy desk exception is a way to think about the fact that you can go and you can study what somebody else is doing. Like, Tony Robbins is a great human being and has really figured out a lot of wonderful stuff. But if you're not a lot like Tony Robbins, then his stuff may not actually work for you. So the messy desk exception is you need to spend more time studying yourself and what has you produce great results rather than trying to copy people who aren't you. And the phrase comes from, I was working with a young attorney and she's general counsel for a big fancy real estate development company. And we were talking about how she could improve and what it would take. And she said, man, I just really got to get my desk clean. And I looked at her because you could tell she was kind of sad in the way that she said it. And I said, Stephanie, what would you say if I told you that you never, ever, ever, as long as you live, have to clean your desk again? And she got so happy so fast. Like I've never seen it. She lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. For her, a messy desk doesn't get in the way. It's not a problem for her. It doesn't make her feel bad about herself. It's just kind of a nuisance because she thinks she needs to manage it for other people. So I think we all do that, right? We have standards we're trying to adhere to. We have things that we're trying to do because it's the way somebody else did it, but it doesn't actually work for us. Like back in the day, I read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and a lot of the concepts are really great, but you're never going to see me schedule myself from morning until night because it doesn't work. It's not a good system for me. I'm a Maverick, for God's sake. I'm too much of a freewheeler. So the thing I tell people is you want to spend a lot of time looking at how do you produce great results, right? If you reading a devotional in the morning or you working out in the morning has you have a great day, then you got to prioritize doing those things because that's the secret formula for you, right? Mm-hmm. I think we all fall into that trap of thinking we've got to be more like someone else, and that's never actually going to be productive. So if you're trying to figure out how to make your world better, you follow the Superman rule. You think harder about what it is that really matters and spend your time there, whether you hire people or not. You want to spend time thinking about how you produce your best results and make sure you've got a lot of that in your environment, right? Does that make sense?
It does. It really does. And I think there's so much value out there in those $99 programs and books and everything. But I think it's important to learn and see what other people are doing and try some things.
Yes.
But you could try, just because you try something doesn't mean you have to force it to work for you. So I think it's a healthy balance of, I could learn from somebody, but does this fit into my wheelhouse of strengths? Does this make me more productive or look forward to my day more? So I think it's all about permission, giving ourselves permission. And also, I'm a huge fan of, the answers are from within. Like you said, turning inward and spending time figuring that out. It's just like you could have the best business plan, but if you haven't, gone deep and thought about who do you really want to work with? Who do you want to help? What do you really want to do for people? Not just like, I could do exactly what that person is doing and I could help a bunch of people. No, what do you want to do? What is your thing? I love that.
I love that you say that. It brings to mind the word experiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like try on what other people are doing, and you can always go back to what is the principle. You don't have to copy the exact practice, right? So somebody might be a real time management ninja, and for you, it just doesn't work to schedule yourself every minute of every day. But the principle underneath it is be intentional about your time, get like blocks of time to get done the work that matters most. And you might do it differently, but you could still enact that principle, right? And And I love what you're saying about taking the time to sit, because man, it's just easier to spend another $20 on a book at the bookstore, right? Sitting by
and
yourself
we do that.
reflecting, right? Oh, you can see it.
Yeah.
For those of you who, you can't see it, but I have a whole wall of books behind me. And I mean, I love doing that too, but it's not always comfortable to sit down and think about how we think. But sometimes those are tapping into your own intuition. You and I have talked about this, right? What's your gut feeling about something? Getting good at listening to that. That's a big deal.
Yeah. And I have a planner that I really like that really works for me. And I've tried a bunch of different ones, but I still don't follow all the rules of the planner. I mean, it lines up pretty much with how I like to organize my time, but there are pieces that just don't work for me, and I don't worry about it. I don't do those pieces. And for time management, I think it's super important, but I look at it more as time as a gift. And, what am I going to do with this gift? So
I love that. I just got the Monk manual, by the way. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't.
It's a very sexy little journal that you get, and it's called the Monk manual. And I'm like you, I don't use all the parts of it quite the way it's designed, but practicing daily, thinking about what I want to create, right? What are the most important parts of my day? And then reflecting on, when was I at my best? When did I struggle? What's something I can take into tomorrow? It's amazing how just writing some of that stuff down most of the time just makes a huge difference. It really is a really great life hack. So I'm not really a sit down and do the same thing every day kind of person, but I'm working on that one because it's really been helpful.
Oh, good. We're always working on something, right? So
oh my God, we should be, right?
Life would be boring if we weren't. What's the 100% rule for managing teams?
Oh, this is one of my favorites. So, for your audience, because I work in fast growing companies, that's a pretty resource scarce environment, right? It's intense. Everything moves really fast. So you really got to have your head on a swivel. And one of the things I realized years ago after working with hundreds of different leaders is that most people, when they have a team, they try to manage the team in the wrong way. So like you hire 3 or 4 or 5 different people, and then you try to manage them in the same way that you get work done. And where this comes from, I was working with an engineering firm. They had maybe 70 open projects at any given time. So I talked to the leaders and I say, how do you manage those projects? Like, how do you know which ones are on track and which ones aren't? And they said, well, somebody from the leadership team opens up the project and looks. Which is crazy, right? I mean, the amount of time you're spending just trying to figure out what you need to focus on. So we did this very simple thing. We did a 110, 100% reporting system where the person who works on the work knows 100% of the details. But the person they report to only needs to know about 10%. It's sort of like your dashboard on your car, right? What are the critical things that you need to pay attention to? Most of us are not paying attention to anything other than gas and speed most of the time, right? And that's what it should be. So the person above them gets 10%. In this case, what we do is we just had each of the teams rate each project each week. They'd give it a red, yellow, or green rating. And green meant everything's good, we're on track, everybody's happy. Yellow meant might be a little bit of trouble here, might be worth digging into. And red was this one's going down fast and in flames. Pay attention, pay attention. So then the 10% was they would report up that bit of information. And then the person at the top just got a list of all 70 projects and could very quickly see which ones were red that we need to spend time on and which ones are yellow if we get to them and which ones are green, we don't need to worry about it. So when you build teams, you want to think about that 110, 100%. So you're not micromanaging people, right? You're not on top of them. That's one of the biggest things that nobody ever really tells you about managing people, and how you make it so much easier for yourself is you let them actually do the job. You think about how they're going to report back to you and when you need to check in with them, right? We've all had people where we give them assignments and we don't give them quite enough instruction. And then they bring us something, and because they can't read our mind, now we're frustrated and annoyed because it doesn't look the way we wanted it to, except that we never told them what we wanted it to look like.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the opposite of that would be giving too much direction, which is to me just as bad. So
yeah. Well, when you're holding on too tight, you're holding on too tight, right? Like you got to think of, and that's that Superman rule again, what really matters, and spend your time there.
Yeah. So I love this one because I'm the queen of Post-its, but I do them in a different way. I just capture. I use an app called Keep in Google, and I have all these thoughts and ideas that come in, and I always want to capture them.
Yeah.
So I make sure that I at least get it on there so that I can go back and take a look at it later if I want to. But I have a feeling the Post-it management style is probably not a good thing when it comes to what you're going to talk about.
You know what? Actually, I might surprise you. I mean, there's some really interesting research out there. The Gallup group, they did a huge study, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of managers and companies. And what they found is that there are some things that good managers just do better. And one of them, the number one thing that managers who are effective do better than anybody else, is their employees consistently know what their job actually is, which is crazy. Like, the main thing you have to do to be a better manager is make sure that your people know what they're supposed to do. And that should tell us all that most of us really aren't that clear. And if you think about it, a lot of times we hire people, the rules change, the job changes, it morphs, our expectations change, and we never go back and make that as clear as we could. So one of the things I always recommend to leaders is use Post-its, right? See what you can fit on a Post-it note. You usually can't get more than 3 ideas on there, no matter how hard you try. But the key there is just simplifying everything and spreading the word a lot more. So what is somebody responsible for? How do you need that end result to look? Even things like the due date, right? All these little things that you could easily put on a Post-it and just keep it really simple. So instead of having hours and hours and hours of meetings about what went wrong, spend the time in advance to put a couple things down on a Post-it, hand it to them, or better yet, have them put it down on a Post-it and hand it to you, so you make sure you're both on the same page and get all the way on the same page. Like, all of these things are just simple ways that we make it harder for ourselves to get work done. And if you start following some of these little teeny tiny rules, you'll make better use of your staff if you have them. But even if you don't have staff, you're going to be way more effective. Some of us need a Post-it note to ourselves, right? Yeah. What's the number one priority today? Yeah. Hey, sales calls matter more than tinkering with the website, right? That's one that I always fall prey to.
Yeah. I like questions. Like, mine is, what would make today great? That's one of my favorite ones. Yeah. Cause then it really makes you think bigger, for one thing. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of fun. So,
So I love that.
What I love is all these ideas are so simple. It's sort of like you could go Captain Obvious. And I love your ability to distill, complex ideas and complex problems to really, it's like it's like, doing math and getting down to, like dividing it down to the prime numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
So well, I just gave people math anxiety. I'm so sorry.
Everybody remove the math anxiety. Let's just take it out of the picture. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, the thing is, part of that I think is a function of just, I'm a very practical person, and I love to read 8 million books, right? And I love to do experiments and tinker with how I produce results and how other people do. But at the end of the day, you got to pay attention to what actually makes a difference. And if you are focused on that, and then working in fast growing companies, that's really all you have time for. So, some companies may have the luxury of sending people away for a 6-month leadership class. The kind of companies that I work with just never have that luxury, right? We have to get people trained really, really fast. The ideas have to be simple. They have to be really contagious. So, some of these have funny names like the Superman rule, but they're all highly, highly practical. And if you do them, and you don't have to do all of them, pick 1 or 2, but they'll help you start taking your time back. Too many of us are sort of a slave to the app on our phone or the emails in our inbox. I mean, I have currently, I think, 9,473 unread emails in my inbox, and it drives a couple of the people in my life crazy, but I know those aren't important emails, and there's no point to me going back and reading them, right? So I think there's a lot to be said for being on the lookout for how you have your life be more of what you want and less of what you don't. And if you just start there, you're probably in a pretty good place.
Yeah, I have 181,000 emails.
You are winning. And I heard a couple people.
I win.
You can hear a couple people just losing their mind right now,
Yeah.
right? They're like, oh my God. Listen, the truth about my inbox is a lot of mine are from Banana Republic anyway. It just doesn't matter. Everybody calm down.
I know. Yeah, Victoria's Secret.
Some of those companies send out a lot of email.
Yeah. One thing I do is I subscribe to a lot of lists because it's kind of cool to see like the names that people have for their subject lines. And so,
that's smart.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do have filters where, I always read emails from my clients or queries. And now I'm compared to like 15, 20 years ago, the search function is so great. And, I have had that angst though. Like I heard one of my colleagues, her goal is to get her email inbox down to 0 every single week. And she's probably, if she's listening, she's maybe had a stroke already. But I'm effective and I'm organized and I have that one thing that probably drives a few people bananas hearing it. And I guess I'm kind of embarrassed that I shared it, but hey, for those of you that have the 9,000, you can go, at least I'm not as bad as Sheri Kaye Hoff.
Well, and I think the reason I have 9,000 is probably because Google is deleting my emails on, you know what I mean? Like anything longer, but that's a great example of the messy desk exception, right? It actually isn't relevant for you or I. Like for some people, maybe they need to because they have critical communications coming through. And I honestly, this week have really started looking at having somebody else manage my inbox because I just don't care. And I don't want to read that many emails. And I have cheated and found out that if you ignore something long enough, if it's really important, they'll call. Which is terrible.
They'll send it like 5 times.
Oh my God. Well, and but again, the question is, what do you have to do to have your world work and have you deliver the results that you're committed to? And I think, answering emails is an old standard that just isn't true for most of us. Or like, I do a ton of stuff on LinkedIn. I get all kinds of clients on LinkedIn. I post really good stuff on LinkedIn. For those of you who are looking for really good stuff, you should go follow me there. But I don't actually have any notifications on my phone from LinkedIn. I have to log into the website to see what's happening there because I don't want 2,700 notifications every day. Yeah. So again, it's that being intentional, right?
Yeah.
By the way, there's an option we call the nuclear option with email where you just go delete all of it. Yeah. Just everything. And then if people need something, they got to start over, which is pretty extreme. But I see if those people weren't having a heart attack before, they definitely are now.
Yeah, I know. There might be something important.
There's not. And even if there is, I'm not going to read it. So there you go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you are too fun. So when people reflect on what we've talked about here today, what are the 1 or 2 big ideas that you'd like people to leave with?
Yeah, I think number 1 is be intentional. Figure out what matters to you. Spend a little bit of time thinking about how you want your life to look. I think sometimes we just assume that we've got to get up at 6 a.m. and start checking emails instead of really asking ourselves. I mean, part of the reason I started my own company was so that I could run my schedule. And there have definitely been times when my business tried to take over. You got to fight for what you want. So, what do you actually want? Do you want to be at your kid's Little League game at 3? You might need to do emails at 10, but you could still be there. And neither one is wrong. It's just, what really matters to you? So 1, be intentional about what you want. Spend some time really thinking about that. And then 2, be a student of your own success and see what it is that you do that has your life be really great, right? Where are you on track? Where are you kind of off track? There's plenty of great coaches and consultants out there who can help you. There's amazing books, like you were saying, right? There's a zillion resources. If you don't know where you want to go and how you want it to end up, though, then sometimes those resources can take you off track. So figure out what you want and then be a student of what it looks like when you very easily and naturally win. That's always where I see people come up with their best performance tips.
I love that. So you mentioned LinkedIn, but how can people get in touch with you? Where should they go?
Yeah. Our website is called maverickandcompany.com because when I chose that website name, I didn't understand I'd have to be writing it and spelling it for the next 5,000 sessions. So it's a little bit long, but Alecia Huck and maverickandcompany.com. And there's all kinds of great stuff on there about the work that I do with fast growing companies and their leadership teams. But what's really cool is we put up a page that is a library, and it has all these videos and articles and book recommendations, like really, really, really awesome stuff for people who are working on leadership or developing their own performance. So it's all free. You don't even have to give us an email, which I know nobody does. In fact, my team had to talk me into putting together a newsletter. So you can get it all for free. You don't have to be bugged. You won't get spammed. You won't get sales calls. And there's a ton of really great stuff on there. So that would be a good recommendation for some great extra resources. Free bonus stuff.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, everyone. And you can also check out SheriKayhoff.com, SheriKayehoff.com for additional free resources. And I just want to say to everyone here today, have a good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I love you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. This episode is sponsored by the Living Your Vision course for creating your optimal life. This course is for creating and fulfilling your dream. Make your dreams your reality instead of a someday idea. Set your vision for your life in motion. Move from trying to be just a little bit better and shift to deliberately creating the life you want at the level you want. Most people are not purposely thinking small. They just have never considered or allowed themselves to think bigger or even on an epic level. Even big thinkers, perhaps you're one of them, often say, I just don't have time to devote to developing a detailed vision of how I want my life to be. What's stopping you from creating your vision the way you really want it? What if you let go of anything that is stopping or blocking you? What if you stepped into your creative zone and designed a compelling vision that drove all of your daily habits and decisions? You can check out the Living Your Vision course at SheriKayhoff.com. That's SheriKayehoff.com. And you'll want to go to the coaching and courses tab.